All right, I'm going to get things started. Appreciate you all coming. My name is Jonathan Ward from Ward Technology Talent. We're an IT staffing firm. We're not going to push our services on you much tonight. Just give you a quick intro. Basically, we've been around since '99. We focus a lot on application development, people involved in the SDLC. One of the big things in terms of what we think is a differentiating factor for our company is we try to focus on building communities that have a positive impact. So the Mobile Learning Lab is a community we started 4 years ago. We've got 2,000 members. We rotate through different subjects. We put them now on a YouTube channel. So if you want to check them out or you missed one, you can check them out there. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have been to a Mobile Learning Lab before? Okay, so maybe half the people here, that's great. Typically what we do is we wear the Mobile Learning Lab shirt. I forgot mine tonight, I was running late from work. But if you have any comments or suggestions on the format, on subjects you'd like us to talk about, anything, please let us know. The whole purpose of these sessions are to give back to the community, and you're the community. So we want to make sure we have sessions and we have formats that are appropriate that you guys like. So your feedback makes these better for you. I guess tonight, the SCORE has been kind enough and gracious enough to co-host this with us. So we're super excited to have the SCORE on board. They love to get back to me as well, obviously. Roy, we're excited for his talk on big data, et cetera, so that'll start shortly. But before that, again, wanted to thank Jimmy and the SCORE for hosting, for the food, for letting us use their space, et cetera, and I'll let Jimmy give a little intro on the SCORE. So thank you all for coming.
Thanks, Jonathan. Just a quick little announcement. I see a lot of you guys don't have drinks, so if you want drinks, just around the corner there's a kitchen. Help yourself tea, coffee, juices, pops, as much as you want. The bathrooms are also on that side as well. If we could just ask you to go around the back just so you don't disturb the speaker or anybody watching the presentation, that would be great. Like Jonathan mentioned, my name is Jimmy Trustowski. I'm the head of talent acquisition here at the SCORE. We're a digital media company specializing in mobile and web apps. We have 4 products right now. The SCORE, which is our sports app, SCORE Esports, covering the professional video game industry. We have a fantasy sports game as well called Squad Up, and we've been recently working with Facebook to build a chat bot on the Facebook Messenger platform. So a lot of pretty interesting things there. I encourage you guys to look us up. We've been a top 100 employer for the past 3 years running, and we've been recently named as a top 100 employer for recent grads. So if you want to look at any opportunities for the SCORE, just please come see myself afterwards. There's some business cards around there as well. And if you guys are looking for opportunities outside of the SCORE, please talk to Jonathan, Joanne, or anybody wearing the Mobile Learning Lab t-shirt. And any questions later on, or if you want a tour, just come and see me. And now, introducing Roy, our speaker.
Hi everyone. Can you guys hear me? Maybe go like this. Hello? 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 Oh, hello? Okay. Oh, that was good. Okay. Right here. All right. Okay. Let's see here. So yeah, thanks for everyone for coming, and glad to be here. And so a little bit about myself. I'll be speaking on big data analytics from kind of cloud to mobile. And so really we'll just go over kind of what is big data, okay? And it's really around kind of a pet project that I built kind of in November for like a few months. And just to get into the cloud technology, specifically Microsoft Azure, try to get some insights on job postings and some analysis, right? And then how to take that into kind of reports, and then into kind of visualizing them into mobile, which is Power BI, right? So, and then we'll go into kind of Q&A. So a little bit about me. My name is Roy Kim. I've been working 14 plus years in kind of Microsoft technology stack, ranging from kind of just .NET, custom development, SharePoint, Microsoft kind of BI, Office 365, and kind of more lately kind of into Microsoft Azure kind of cloud solutions, right? Currently I'm an IT kind of independent consultant for public sector right now, and University of Toronto Computer Science graduate. And so big data, Okay, so we're going to go through kind of what is big data, what is the big data platform technologies, kind of solution, and then into data insights, and into kind of how do we see that in, let's say, kind of in a mobile app. Okay, so kind of going down a bit more specific is I selected a candidate as a kind of a big data set would be kind of like job postings. And I'll explain kind of why is that or how is that kind of big data, okay? And I've selected kind of Microsoft Azure Data Platform to help with the analytics. And within that, the specific technology is things like a data lake, HDInsight, which is really Hortonworks, Hadoop platform, SQL and Power BI, right? And then a bunch of other stuff. And then from there, what can we see in terms of job trends and analysis and analytics? So before we go further, actually, I wanted to ask, how many of you are actively kind of in the analytics space, doing in your kind of jobs? How many of you doing kind of data analytics in general? No? Okay. 3? Okay, cool. How many of you are working with the cloud, like Microsoft Azure Cloud? Okay, nice. Anything, AWS, Google Cloud, anything else? Okay, nice. And how many of you are actually interested in kind of just general mobile application development? Okay, cool. Right. Okay, makes sense. I think that's like a third of you guys. All right, so what is big data, right? So this is how I like to characterize big data, right? So I would say it's, people say 3 V's, but I like to say 4 V's, right? So the first V is volume, of course, right? The volume of data, right? These days, the amount of data that's kind of gets generated, especially in the internet, is growing, every second, every day, and there's just tons of it, right? And not just volume, but also by velocity, at the rate at which they come, and also the demand of at the rate at which we can analyze and process as they come in, right? Because think of the whole throughput of that. And then kind of at the bottom, you see here is kind of the variety of the data, right? So, and this is key, right? So from the left side, you see here kind of traditionally work with structured data, right? In relational database management systems, right? For the sake of kind of data integrity, being robust, right? But now, kind of I guess more with the internet, we get more kind of semi-structured data, right? Kind of flat files, that's not like stored in like comma-separated files, application logs, and then there's unstructured data, which is basically images. Just general text, right? Like documents, PDFs, and videos, right? How do we get kind of insights into those forms, right? So from kind of like the bottom left is kind of like more on the enterprise kind of data sets, through line of business applications, ERP systems, and those are generally kind of easier to work with, right? They're very well structured. You just do simple SQL queries usually, and then you can get a general report, okay? But now with kind of like the internet, the top right, we have things like Internet of Things, sensors, right? And, and they're coming out at a very fast pace, at large volumes. So how do we have applications or build systems that can harness and capture kind of data that's characterized by these 3 V's, right? And the next V I like to talk about is kind of down there, veracity, right? So we have data that becomes very imprecise, very incomplete, right? That's kind of very messy, and that needs to be cleaned up, right? So even kind of data that's very unstructured and very messy, especially with large volumes, if you can clean it up and do some aggregation and averages and sums, you can get a rough kind of pattern from that, right? With the impreciseness of data that's out there, right? So really, it's really the cloud that can kind of harness and kind of get the gold nuggets from data that's kind of more on the top right? Especially when you have like huge volumes of data, and then maybe you can make sense of a small percentage of that data, kind of rolling that up, aggregating that in terms of like an average, sum, total, median, maximum, minimum, all that kind of stuff to find some kind of trend over time or by geography or etc. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? Okay, cool. Okay, so what about Azure Cloud? Okay, so right here, Microsoft Cloud has many services and growing. And I always get these email updates that, okay, a new service has come out, whether it's data platform or application development or kind of infrastructure monitoring, kind of testing suites, mobile testing suites and mobile dev or Xamarin, if you ever heard of that. This platform is growing in Microsoft and also in Google and in AWS, right? So, so this is kind of like the technology that I've been kind of working with, and just want to provide some more further insights. Now, within this cloud platform that Microsoft has, if we zoom in a bit and kind of grab at a subset of that cloud platform, we have what you call the Azure Data Platform, okay? So I have two illustrations. These two graphics are from Microsoft kind of documentation, and they're two ways of kind of expressing the platform, right? And the key point here is they don't look exactly the same, and because it's a platform, it's a bunch of ingredients, and you can formulate a recipe to bake any kind of solution, So, you have from kind of how to get data, right? How to process it, like streaming, real-time, data warehousing, machine learning, machine algorithms to get to predictive, cataloging, and then visualization, reporting, and how do you share and publish to kind of at the presentation layer, right? Which we'll get to, which is kind of the mobile interface, right? So that's kind of the landscape of the Microsoft kind of data platform. Now, just to give you some contrast as where Microsoft sits, according to Gartner, this is as of very recent, February 2017, that Microsoft is quite a bit in the lead, right? So as opposed to kind of Tableau and Qlik, they're very good as well, that I hear. But those are kind of like the options in terms of kind of data analytics leadership. Okay, so in terms of analytics, right? From a kind of a functional point of view and as opposed to kind of technical, right? So I really like this diagram right here, which really speaks on kind of, okay, what is analytics, right? And they prescribe it in four ways. Kind of descriptive, what happened, right? So that's kind of like your pre-canned reports. What's your monthly reports, or what were your sales, right? In past year over year. And kind of like, and then from there, kind of diagnostics, like why did that happen, right? Why is there a trend? And then maybe with kind of, if you know cubes, like analytical cubes, you can do drill downs and root cause if you have the right type of modeling, right? Kind of drill down meaning, okay, we'll look at a year. Why is it trending upwards, right? And then from there, you can kind of drill down into a certain, what do you call a dimension, which is kind of location or a gender, or kind of a demographic, kind of quality, etc. And then we have kind of predictive, right, which is kind of gets into the kind of machine learning aspect, right? What's based on past history, what is the probability that a future event will occur based on, future input parameters, right? So, but it's strictly based on past history, right? So as long as, we'll get this a bit later in the machine learning. I have a slide for that, but that's kind of predictive. And then prescriptive, kind of, well, what should I do, right? So at the end of the day, all these four factors really come to a point where you got to make a decision and you take an action, right? That's what it boils down to, okay? So let's talk about the job posting data set that I've been looking at, that I've been pulling from internet sources, right? So how is job postings kind of like a big data set? Well, it could be very much, high volume, right? If I go through different job sites through their APIs, I can pull many, right? Also by different geography, because the internet is open. I can go to this country's popular job websites and start pulling from there, right? And also job postings, they come out every day, right? Every hour, right? So it comes at a high rate. And it's got a lot of data as well, like metadata and full text. They're not really necessarily small morsels of data, but when you add them all up, it can get really huge. So the volume part, the huge volume part is there, right? It just depends on how you capture that, right? And in terms of velocity, kind of as I was saying, well, job postings come out, all the time, every minute, every second. You just got to pull from those sources, and to do that at scale. Variety, I would say it's more in the semi-structured and unstructured. Semi-structured, that there is well-defined metadata, usually like job title, location, the company, and then kind of unstructured portions like the job description, which is like full text, right? So that's the unstructured part, right? And then so how do we kind of get insights from that? And I'll talk about that later. And then also kind of veracity, right? Definitely pretty incomplete, imprecise. For example, sometimes some job postings, they would show like, okay, this job is both, like there is full-time or it could be part-time, but then sometimes I've seen data where it says, well, this is part-time and temp, or temp and contract, or seasonal, right? Well, which one is it, right? Because it's going to impact the way I do reporting or do my analytics. So it's up for interpretation, right? And if you're going to, depending on the business requirement, right, you have to kind of flesh that out. So yeah, that's just something that needs some further analysis, right? Salary and per hour, if a job has per hour, is it per hour assuming 40 hours a week, 37.5 hours a week, or, part-time, right? So it's these type of things that a lot of work and energy comes into play in terms of analysis, right? Getting to the weeds. So I just want to jump way ahead and just give you, okay, well, what does this come out to, right? Which is, here's a Power BI report that I built, and it is job postings I pulled from all the major cities, okay, over kind of a 2-month period, kind of daily. In Azure, I developed a application that goes against these APIs to pull that data. So here, 21,000 jobs. And just think about how if I got this data from many countries, multiply that by many countries, many cities all over the world, practically, and other job sites as well. That I can just keep on compounding and grow my data set, and then figure out a lot of other trend lines, right? So as you can see here, you can already see some insights here, right? And some of it's not that much of a surprise, right? Like, for example, Ontario, if you see the pie chart here, Ontario, has a big chunk. Same thing as Alberta and in BC, right? So that's not too much of a surprise. Those are highly populated areas, right? But actually, for me, because I kind of grew up in kind of Toronto all my life, and I haven't really ventured in much into the Quebec area. I didn't know that Quebec had a ton of jobs in there, right? You don't really think of kind of Montreal, Quebec. Yeah, they are major cities, but I didn't really notice that, Quebec has fairly similar amount of jobs as the others, right? So that was pretty insightful for me, right? Surprise, So, and then we have kind of like the other countries kind of plotted. But I'll dig more into this from a mobile point of view, kind of interacting. I have my mobile phone, and you'll see it on the screen so far. Any questions so far?
How comprehensive is your data, in terms of the job sites?
So how comprehensive, meaning?
It seems kind of, in terms of the population, you would expect Ontario to be far bigger in terms of the chunk, and it seems to be fairly equally distributed.
Correct. Oh, you mean how comprehensive? Okay, so yeah, again, this is kind of just pulled whatever I can, right? So there has been some cleaning as I pull it, because I'm interested in getting it fairly accurate. But yes, there is some. I would assume there's some margin of error, but it seems, pretty fair to me, right? If you look at Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, etc., right? Like I probably pulled Ontario more often than I did for the other parts, but in terms of comprehensiveness, yeah, not very comprehensive. But again, this is not like a commercial thing I'm building. I'm not building it for someone paying client or anything like that. It's just a pet project for fun, right? So, but it's good to know. Okay. Okay, here's another one, right? And then just a bar graph, right? So I'll get into more of a demo. So kind of, how many of you are, so I just know how to talk through this slide. This is a very technical kind of architecture slide here. How many of you are kind of technical kind of background? How many of you are more business, kind of functional? Okay. So, okay, cool. Then I can kind of geek out here, okay, and talk architecture. All right. So, yeah, let me know if you have any questions. So basically with this slide, I'm going through kind of the solution architecture, kind of end to end, right? And of kind of what I built and what I did, basically, right? So basically, okay, as I mentioned, kind of REST internet data sets you're starting off with. It's out, and I basically go through REST APIs and or screen scraping just through the HTML. I screen scrape, right, to get the data, right. I also get kind of resume information as well, and that's the screen scraping part. Next is in Microsoft Azure, there's something called Azure Batch. Right, so batch is kind of batch processing, kind of, basically if you know .NET's a console app, right? There's no UI or anything like that. It's just running pure code, and that's calling against the internet APIs, basically, right? So Azure Batch is more for high compute processing scenarios. And basically behind the scenes is that there's many nodes or VMs being spun up, and then that my little application, they're being deployed to each node. So typically you can have like 100 or theoretically thousands of compute nodes, and you deploy your application to every single one of them, and then they're off like they're going off like crazy, just scouring the internet basically, right? So I'll go into that a bit more later. That's what Azure Batch is about. And then basically, where do I store that data? There's something called a blob store or storage account and in Microsoft, so I store some of that data. But there's something called Azure Data Lake, right, in Microsoft Azure, which is for big data applications, right? So ultimately, I take that console app and I start storing data, which is in JSON. I chose JSON format, and I store them as files into this Azure Data Lake, okay? And with the Azure Data Lake, it is meant for like theoretically petabytes of data, right? Extremely high volumes of data. All it is a folder structure, hierarchical file system, right? And then you can put on top of it Azure Data Lake Analytics, which I'll get into, or Hadoop, which is HDInsight, that Microsoft kind of wrapped around, right? Behind the scenes is a Hadoop, right? So with the Azure Data Lake, you got security, encryption, all these other capabilities that you want. So for some of you that doesn't know big data too much, Azure Data Lake is meant for kind of raw data that you want to hold, because you might want to get back at it, right, and then reprocess it in a different way. So let's say the marketing department would see this kind of raw data. Okay, well, we can, do some, data science or do some reporting off of it, and they're going to start to clean it up and do it that they would like, right? And then let's say 6 months later, because we have the raw data, a different department, let's say the finance department, can go back at it and be like, okay, we still have that data, and we want it raw, and then they start to kind of slice and dice it and massage the data that they see fit, right? So basically, that's what kind of like a data lake is. That's the purpose of a data lake, kind of from a functional point of view, right? And so data lake analytics is kind of like a kind of Hadoop-like. It's their own type of big data processing. So basically, with USQL, which is a scripting language, which is SQL-like and C# programming, that's what you use to take these files and start to do aggregations and averaging and sums, and to process that data to get some kind of insight, right, or trend analysis. Group by functions, especially cleaning up the data, deduplication. If there's like repeated records that you pull, like let's say you went from job site A, job site B, but somehow you identified that something's duplicated, like deduplication. That's an example, right? So basically anything where you want to get from a state of this raw data to something more massaged and meaningful with business rules into it, that's where the data lake would come into play. So behind the scenes, the data lake analytics and let's see here, and Azure HDInsight, right? Which you can, with Azure, which is Horton DataWorks. Are you familiar with Horton DataWorks, some of you? Right, so basically those two that I mentioned, right? Basically they have kind of distributed kind of programming, right? So it takes these files, it splits them out, breaks them out, right, into basically the principle is commodity hardware, not like these, the whole idea is you don't need supercomputers, right, that got so much memory, so much CPU cores, right? It's not like a scale-up architecture, it's more a scale-out. So you just have, you don't have to have these monster computers or servers, right? You take the data, you chunk it out, you spread them across, you have your script or your Hive or Spark application or whatever you choose, and then you start to process the data as they're kind of in chunks, right? And once you process them, then what Hadoop does is brings them together, and which is reduce the reduction part, and it spits out the final output, which is like another file. Right, so basically, what I did was I went from like, let's say, like many gigs of data to let's say 100 meg file, right? That processed all that data, right? Into getting an average of salaries grouped by each city, something like that, right? So that's kind of the idea between Azure HDInsight and Azure Data Lake Analytics, okay? And so the storage account that you see on the bottom right, that is more to the Azure HDInsight to hold as another storage mechanism, right? But for me, my design was that Azure Data Lake is the primary because it's been designed for the big data scenarios and solutions, right? So the next part of the platform that I tried out was Azure Data Factory, right? So what Azure Data Factory is just, how I would like to simply put it, is moving data, right, from one data source to the next, right? So it could go from kind of flat files to SQL database, or from SQL database to flat file, or data lake to SQL database. So there's always source to target, schema mapping, all that stuff, right? So it's basically like an ETL engine in the cloud. And so what I did was I spun up a SQL Azure, right, platform as a service. And I had Azure Data Factory take the data from Azure Data Lake. So basically, not the raw files, but with the application that I built, I generated a resulting output file, right, which is more structured. And then I put that into like a SQL table, let's say, right? So that was the purpose. So just to let you know. And yeah, it goes into SQL Azure Data Warehouse or just a simple database. And then from there, you can do kind of machine learning. So let's say you have this massage data, and which I'll get to another slide, and start to build a machine learning algorithm or a model, right, to predict future outcomes when you have like new data coming in, and you want to predict the probability of, let's say, a salary or some event with some probability associated with it, right? And then last, and I didn't, it's grayed out, but that's because I didn't do this part yet, but it's in the plans. But I just want to highlight that there's something called analysis services, which is like your tabular model, if you know about kind of tabular design, right? For, again, that's more for kind of BI tooling, right, where you can get the slicing and dicing and drill down for very fast querying, right? So it just kind of came out like the last several months. Like I tried it, but it was still pretty buggy. Okay, so and then there's other services in Azure like Visual Studio Online and Azure Active Directory for security and authentication. Okay, so now we get to the part where about kind of visual reporting, right? So you can use Visual Studio, right, as your dev tooling for those scripts like USQL, and then using Excel and Power BI to do kind of reporting and visualization, okay? And that's where you have like report builders, developers, data analysts, even data scientists take a part in that with those tools, right? And then finally we get to, okay, well, how do we get, the hard work that these report developers and data scientists, data analysts, the work they've done, how do they share it out to the end users, right? To a wider audience, right? So what you have here is you have, things like SharePoint Online and Power BI Service, which is software as a solution service. And you use, again, the web browser or use the mobile app, right? To kind of distribute that so that, or where end users or business users can interact with that data, see the data in its final cleaned and glorious form, right? That would be the flow. And whoops, so any questions here with this kind of architecture?
Yeah, so what do you keep in the storage account? It's like files that you created after HDInsight, or what is the storage for?
Okay, so yeah. So there's many options with HDInsight. You can have Azure Data Lake, you can have a storage account, which is a general purpose storage for Azure in general. Okay, now in this, so you can have either or you can have both, right? It just depends on your various scenarios.
Yes, but in Data Lake, you keep raw data, right?
Yes.
But then you transform data somehow using like Azure HDInsight, if I understood properly, right? And then you keep those data in cloud store HDFS.
Yes, yes. So you can, that's an option. So I guess what you're asking is, let's say I run my script that will process the data, right? And then the output of that application, where does it go, right? Yeah. So it can go either one of those two, wherever you want, right?
Because then you're processing like everything else from Data Lake, but you're not using data from storage account, right?
One of the related design loss, right?
Yes.
And also it ties to the solution. It's isolated.
Yes, it's isolated. That's why I'm asking. So why do you need that data if you're not processing it anywhere else for
Oh.
visualization and presentation?
Okay, so, sorry, I couldn't hear you quite clearly. So why do you need the data, the right side, the Azure storage account?
Why do you use those files, those resulting files?
Oh, where do you, okay, so so you can have Power BI, okay, hook up into the storage account on the right directly, right? So let's say you developed an application either in Azure Data Lake or using Azure HDInsight, and then it processed it, and the output of that file, all right, the data is in a file in the right storage account. So you can have the Power BI, read that file, right, which is kind of a more tabular format, right, like a CSV, and and there you go. This one, it's just general storage, just general option. Like I also throw it in there, right? But I didn't really use it that much at first. Yeah.
So you just choose the way to work with raw data versus raw data then, right?
Sorry, can you hear?
So you're mostly processing raw data.
Yes.
All other products, but you could also use the files from storage account, right?
Correct. So, yeah. So one thing to walk away with and understanding is that this is not like a prescribed solution, right, or prescribed way, because the key word here is platform, right? With a platform, you can you can use all those pieces or ingredients and make your own recipe, right? That's aligned to your requirements or your solution, right? So there's many options basically, right? Like for example, Azure Data Factory, like I'll have it hooked up there. That Azure Data Factory could have been kind of more in the left side of the whole pipeline, right? It could have been hooking up to internet data sets, right? I write some custom code, right? And I deploy it into the data factory to get the data and put it into Azure Data Lake. That's a possibility. So with the storage account on the right and then Azure Data Lake Store, you can have either. You can even put your raw files, right? Your data lake raw files into the storage account on the right. You know, that's perfectly fine, right? It's just that you lose out on some of the benefits, right, that come in Azure Data Lake Store, right? So and that's kind of like some of the discussions I've had in real projects, right? Storage account versus Data Lake Store. Data Lake Store is more expensive, okay? Not just 10%, like double, triple, right? But you're paying for something, right? So Data Lake Store, if you need performance, you need that scalability. Like the storage account has a maximum of 500 terabytes, right? It actually has a limitation. But then, hey, if you're not dealing with 500 terabytes, many companies don't, right? They don't need a real data lake, right? They just working with a few terabytes, right? Or you can have many storage accounts, right? And you archive it and when you're done with that data, archive it, you know. So it depends on your requirements, and it really depends, which is a good thing. It depends on many things. So you have many options. So, yeah, it's a good question. Yeah.
I understand why you choose this solution, this approach. So,
Yeah. Okay. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
So, on the storage here.
Yes.
So basically you have raw information there. There's no RDBMS there,
No. Flat files.
flat file.
Yes.
So
JSON or whatever.
So only when you take that data and process it through the pipeline and then SQL DB,
Mm-hmm.
you get the results. But
Yes.
also you can use Azure Data Lake Analytics that process raw data, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which one of the two are the more used analytics tools? Either using SQLDB or Azure Data Lake Analytics? Just so.
Okay, so yeah, okay. So Azure Data Lake Store, because it's more raw, even if you have USQL or a Hive application or Spark or any of those big data Hadoop applications, and you take the raw files and then you make some more data that's kind of more sensible, right? That's fine too. But those are for more like data scientists, right? They want to play around with, they want that agility to formulate and work with data in any way they want. They want that flexibility. But with the SQL DB, it's very structured, right? If you ever work with data, you got to define the schema, right? You got to define, foreign key relationships and all this stuff, and it's slower, right? It doesn't scale out, although data warehouse can, right? So with SQL, you would probably work with smaller data sets, right? You can still work with gigabytes of data, right? But not terabytes, or it starts to get difficult. You can still do terabytes, right? But then when you start to query terabytes of data, it'll take a long time, right? If you had terabytes of data that you processed, right, with let's say your big data application, so you went from let's say like 5 terabytes to a resulting 5 terabyte file, and you want to query it because of the distributed processing, like it'll break it up, right, and it'll query where it needs to, like filter by this, group by that. It's able to do that a lot faster, right, than a SQL database because it doesn't have that distributed processing behind the scenes, right? So that's kind of one of the key differences between Data Lake Store or HDInsight versus your traditional SQL database, right? Does that make sense? So like traditionally we've been working, for me, my career has always been databases, relational, but again it's very structured, right? And then there's certain constraints from that, right? Where the big data stuff, it's more flexible, right, and faster, and you can work with a lot more data if you have that, right? So, Yeah. Any other questions?
So in that the whole architecture, right? The Azure Data Lake store and storage account and HDInsight. So these are the three big data components, right? On the hardware, in terms of hardware.
Yeah, and data analytics, HDInsight, and yeah.
It sits on top of that.
Yeah, it sits on top of it. So HDInsight can work as data lake or a general purpose storage account. Data analytics would, because it's a Microsoft kind of technology, it only work against the data lake store, right?
When you go to the Azure Batch, right? So like so you have multiple nodes running your custom API to like do the web crawling and then take the data from like actual websites, like job websites.
Yes.
And then so you are doing it in parallel from your Azure Batch, right? Like doing sequentially.
Yes, yes.
It's doing parallel.
Yeah. So, yeah, I got into do parallel, which is pretty tricky. But at the current moment, it's been running every day, but not in parallel, just one node, right? Just because of my costs, right? Like it costs me money, right? So, and plus I can't scale that far yet, right? I can't scale. So I have a very small node. It's just once every day, and it just runs like 5 minutes. That's it, you know.
Something like a Kafka component in the whole Microsoft Azure platform.
Oh, is there Kafka, you're asking? Yeah, there is Kafka. That's for the streaming real-time analytics. Yeah. So I haven't played around with that, but that's fairly new. A Kafka in an Azure HDInsight, you can have a Kafka cluster, I believe. So,
I was thinking more on the Azure Batch, so you can have like a Kafka cluster over there.
oh,
Kafka is completely different from Hadoop, right? So you have to integrate Hadoop with Kafka together.
oh, I see.
Yeah, so then you have like a lot of partitions where like, you can have like multiple producers and consumers on the Kafka side, so that you can get the data from multiple websites.
Yeah, I don't think Kafka would work in Azure Batch, if that you're asking. No, like maybe the idea is the same, but yeah, it would be in Azure HDInsight. They would do that. Okay.
How frequent is the data? How frequent you are crawling the data from the website?
Just once a day. Yeah, it's still small. Like I'm still working on it. Like I wanted to make it scale out, because if you see what I'm kind of building out, like is that the cloud is meant for agility and scalability, right? So it's not that it's pretty reachable for you and me to build solutions that are highly scalable. So again, I'm pretty a big keener and passionate about kind of the cloud technology, and really I did this pretty much all by myself, right? But a lot of evenings and weekends for a couple months. Still a far way to go, but but the thing is, this power is in our fingertips, right? That's kind of like the moral of the story here, right? So it can be done, right? So. Okay, I'm just going to really go through the next few slides, and I want to go to the mobile demo because this is a mobile learning lab. But I'll share this presentation out kind of later tonight or this week, and you can go through the details. So I already talked about some of the stuff. How do you grab data? What kind of packages, libraries I use for scraping? What's the console application about, kind of the architecture in the data collector app I made, how to do application logging as that data collector is running. Maybe the API changed, right? I want to be notified if something changed and it's breaking my app, like the data collector, right, in Azure Batch, right? So this is what Azure Batch looks like. You can see in the graphic, you have your console app. You say you deploy to many nodes, and then those nodes, they run with specific command line args. Okay, this node will go after Canada, this one US, this one after India and London, whatever. You know what I mean? So to do that, right? And you kind of schedule that out. And skip that. Data Lake, right? I talked about that already, right? So again. The scenarios are line of business applications, video, social, etc., right? And then the analytics. So this is what if you're interested in what data analytics the script looks like, the USQL, this is what it looks like. I get all the data, I get the JSON data, right? So get me all the JSON data in the job postings folder, right, which is in Azure Data Lake, okay? And then I build a schema on top of it, right? And then I output it into a single TSV file, basically. That's all it is, right? And when I run that, this is like the distributed kind of processing that happens in the background, right? So the point is there was 1,000 files, and it took 3.4 minutes, right? And I scaled it up. Like, this is the cool part. I used 50 nodes, right, on this, whatever that means, right? Compute nodes, you know what I mean? It's very black box. It's very transparent. And I'll put the single output file. So this is where you can have Power BI connect directly into that data lake store and then read that TSV file, right? You know, it is 51 megs. It should be around 50 megs, if you get what I'm saying, right? That's the resulting file, okay? And HDInsight is really Horton Data Works platform behind the scenes. They just wrap it, right? Microsoft just wraps it, right? And then here do that. So some considerations, and then we go to SQL database. It's just a simple database, and then do some modeling, kind of data warehousing. I'm just showing a date dimension that I added to it so that the resulting file that I processed, and then I have a date hierarchy, if you guys know what that means, right? So that I can do some kind of drill down, right, by year, by month, you know, because I have that hierarchy set up in this SQL database. And then there's the data factory. So in a nutshell, it's just moving data from one source to one target. So this is where it supports, like, supported sources, right? Like a lot of stuff. But the interesting thing is the supported sinks, the targets, it's all Azure, right? So basically, how do you get stuff from anywhere to Azure, basically, right? So there's many options to move data around, but this is one of the options, right? So now let's get into how much time do I have?
How much time do you need?
Like 15 minutes or?
Yeah, you have 20 minutes.
20 minutes? Okay. All right. Okay. Just want to know. So yeah, now.
Ask questions after that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get to the mobile app, right? So basically, I kind of went through the spectrum of kind of going from pure cloud, the internet, right, data sources, how to process that data using cloud technology, and then into kind of Power BI, and then how do we see it from an end user point of view in a mobile app, right? So this is the Power BI apps, which is a software as a solution, okay, and you can do some editing and creating your reports, and then here are your mobile scenarios. So some key mobile scenarios you'd be interested in is where data is frequently updated and accessed. You know, it's updated per minute, per hour, per day, because, you know, you're on the run and you want to quickly check, right, what's going on, right? And that's fitting for, and, you know, easily and quickly with your mobile device, right? As well as, you know, some examples would be kind of Internet of Things or sensor data, like what's happening in your home, right? Or if you're looking at a power plant, you know, you kind of want to know real time what's going on, right? Or real time, you want to know retail and customer analytics. Let's say you have a big campaign going on, right? You want to know kind of like what's going in the Twitter feeds, or, you know, accessing your micro campaign website, right? What's going on, so you can make decisions and actions. Okay, wait a minute. All of a sudden, there's, you know, people, they're not really like coming into the store, whatever, for whatever reason, right? So you know that real time you want to take action, or what's going on, what's the issue here? Maybe something's not working, or so you can quickly kind of pivot and, you know, fine tune kind of your strategy on the fly, right? The same is kind of team and organizational performance, like ticket management. You know, you want to know, like, let's say for a large organization, there's like requests on IT, fixing the printer or the laptop. And what I'll get into is kind of the collaborative analysis and decision making you do in the mobile app, right? So in scenarios where you're not always, obviously, you're not always in front of a nice big computer, right? You're always on the go. you're always traveling, those are the key mobile scenarios, right? So we'll look at navigation, dashboard, responsive design, visual interaction, sharing, annotations, Q&A, which is pretty cool, alerts, and favorites. So let me get set up here. Okay, and see here. Okay, so we're whoops. Let's see here. Use slideshow. One second. All right, here we go. Okay, so I have my Power BI app right here. Okay. And here are some of those job posting reports or visualizations that I built. Okay, it's loading up. So you kind of saw the screenshot I had. Okay, I'm going to click on the top one, right? And then as I click on it, that responsive design kicks in. It kind of automatically puts you in landscape mode. Okay, so it's a little slow because it's kind of going over the wire to pull the data. And as it's generating, okay, so what I like about this is that I created the pie chart here. So if I click on BC, right, it kind of zooms in. Okay, you get kind of a focus, right, and filtering on kind of BC. Now I'm going to click back on the pie chart on Ontario. Okay, and then boom, I kind of get the bulb, the everything in there, and I kind of zoom, pan, pinch, right, go further. Whoops, I'm kind of bugged out here. Okay, let's try to go back, reset. So, okay, we'll look at a different report. Any questions about that experience? That kind of that what I did was pretty cool. Did you like it?
I wanted to go into the data
Yeah.
from there. So, you focus on an area and we wanted to look at not the raw data,
Yeah.
but the organized data. How would you do that from there?
Sure. That's what I try to do, and then the app. Okay, so let's try that again. So I click on the map again, because I guess let's say one of those dots, right? You want to look in there and see for that location how many jobs are in that location. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wanted to drill down.
So okay, so drill down. And there's definitely ways to drill down to actual record each row of data in there. I'm not sure if I have that set up with this one, but definitely it'll say, okay, do you want to see the C data, right? And it'll just come out in raw table format, right? So I have that, and then so I click. Oh, okay, wait a minute. So as you can see here, one thing that's not too good about this app is that it is pretty slow. So I just clicked somewhere, right?
Whatever it's all about.
Yeah, Everett, Ontario, count of city. So that's like kind of 2 jobs in there, etc. Right? And then so yeah, you get the idea. And then there's and then as you see, there's a filter at the bottom, kind of by date, right? So I can set a window, right? If I scroll that, but because it's loading, it's not that responsive. So okay, but let's talk about this one now. I like this one a lot because this is actual public resume data that people posted. My resume is out in the public as well. So basically, and this took a lot of code, right? Application building, right? Which is, okay, so in people's resumes, the companies that they work for on the left, right? And the post-secondary, the education side in your resume, like the school that you went to, right? So here's a comparison. So let's say I click on IBM. Okay, hopefully it captured my finger. Let's see, I'll do that again. So I'm trying to show a cross filter. Okay, there we go, cross filter. So the 39 people who had IBM went to these schools, right? University of Calgary, one, University of Alberta, Southern Alberta Institute, et cetera, right? Down there. So you get that cross filtering. Now I'm going to click on University of Calgary on the right. So to get, let's see what happens here. So I could do that one more time. Click. Okay, do that. Okay, there we go. So now the people who went to University of Calgary, they took on the jobs on the working for the companies on the left, right? So I think this data is somewhat like my application is correct because if you see here, there's University of Calgary right here. So you would think that people who went to University of Calgary graduates, they went to take a master's or a PhD, and you become a teaching assistant or a professor. So there is some kind of correlation there, right? Where you have, people who went to University of Calgary also work for University of Calgary, right? Does that make sense? So that's pretty cool, right? And hopefully things, like you have your cannabis energy, Husky energy. Okay, I know Husky energy. It is in Alberta, right? I'm sure, right? I'm not sure about this company, but the word energy, because Alberta, Calgary is an energy kind of industry. So it all kind of makes sense. So the person who asked about comprehensiveness, I think it's fairly comprehensive, fairly accurate. So I feel good about it personally, yeah.
Were you putting the job data or also the resumes which were submitted for those jobs?
Yeah, so there's in the internet, you can pull people who posted their resumes online, right? And it's there for public viewing, right? So that's a separate data set, right? That I pulled, right? But I didn't pull their names or anything. That doesn't really matter to me, right? It's just the education and the job profile and their skill summary, basically, right? So that's kind of what I did, and then scroll in there. So okay, another functionality, which I personally like, is kind of annotation. Okay, so I clicked on, if you see here on the bottom right, there was like an annotation button, and what I can do is I can say, circle this, and then the people work for these companies, right? And I'd say, yay, okay, awesome, right? And then there's see here. Okay, there's another face that I'm trying to pull, but I guess it's not showing up. Yes? Oh, okay. Oh, like a pen? Okay. All right. Okay, cool. Thank you. So. Okay, got it. Okay. Oh, I don't think this is a Samsung. Yeah, it's an Android. So yeah, I have an iPhone, Apple things anyways. Okay. So, and then obviously you can have text in here, hi, annotation, whatever. You get the point there, right? And then you can share it out, right? You can email it. You can download it as an image. And then from there, you can kind of send it out, put in your Dropbox, etc. So through your mobile experience, it connects with everything kind of through your mobile device, right? All your other apps or services, right? And then the other thing, so clear all annotations. I top right, I click exit out of there. Okay, I'm going to go back. Okay, and another cool feature, which I'll show after, let's see, it loads up. Okay, go back into this. Okay, and then if you see at the bottom, there's kind of like two chat windows there, right? So this is called Q&A feature, right? So sort of like a chat bot, sort of, not there, but it's a Q&A. So basically, with the data that I have in there, like the reports, you start to ask questions, right? So let's see here, I go average of salary, you know, let's see here, let's see what happens. Average of salary. So that's probably across my data set, across all of the cities, right? It makes sense, right? It's not that far off, I would say. And let's say, okay, let's see if this works. In Toronto, let's see if it filters. So average salary, we're city, and there you go, 66. You know, I think Toronto is more higher paying than the rest of Canada. So that kind of makes sense, right? 75. Okay, so close, close somewhat, right? You know, and let's see here. And so if I were to start from the beginning, right? So what it gives you options are kind of like, these are kind of the specific reports or tables behind the scenes. So if you want to get more specific, right, then you go job count, you know, the number of jobs or whatever out there, you know. So in January, say in, whoops, spelled it wrong, January. Okay, oh, that didn't work. Oh well. Okay.
When you pull jobs every day, that's like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
What do you do with duplications?
Sorry?
What do you do with duplications?
Duplications? Yeah.
Posting support or something like that.
Yeah, so that's kind of like on my to-do list, is to dedupe it. So I've analyzed that 10% of the data is full of duplications, right?
10%?
Yeah, 10% of it is duplications, roughly. And I need to figure out how to dedupe it. It's not that trivial, right? So there is for each job post, there's a unique key, and it's a pretty expensive, high processing thing. But yeah, I need to clean it up. But yeah. So as I went through this kind of project, for my own learnings, I'm learning that, man, like the huge amount of time was cleaning up data, right? So if you talk to any kind of big data person, machine learning or whatever, a lot of it has to do with cleaning. They say 80% is cleaning data. 80% is cleaning data, right? Yeah, especially in that big data, especially you go to the top right, it's like that, right? So basically, when you see data in the bottom right was relational, it was forced to be clean at some point, right? It was, either through like the user interface, you have a form, right? And then it has all the validation rules, like enter your name, and it'll say, it's too long or it's misspelled, So there's always some kind of cleaning, through the movement of data, right? So, any questions?
What component is driving the query engine?
Pardon?
What component is driving the query engine?
Oh, so it is Power BI app service, right? It's part of the Power BI product, right? Nothing specific to whatever I mentioned, like the Azure architecture. But behind the scenes, Power BI is built on top of the Azure platform at the end of the day, right? So that Q&A, it's fairly new. It's fairly new. The last year, or for the mobile app, it was newly released, like maybe a month or two ago. I'm sure there's some kind of text analysis and cognitive service that was leveraged to do that stuff, right? So it all comes together, these technologies, and helping each other out, right? So, okay, anything else? So, at the bottom, right, you have sharing, right? You want to invite a colleague, etc. And let's see here. Oh, I included an image of my son. I just added it, right? Let's see here.
Roy, one question.
Yeah.
How much is, this is all provided by Microsoft, or you have custom code behind the scenes?
To do the visualizations,
Not the application itself.
the application itself. Which part of the application?
Okay. The map and all this stuff is you're leveraging what Microsoft is providing in Azure, right?
Yes.
But my question is, you also added to that, to that application custom code? Your own code?
Yeah, I did some code to get that raw data, like what I had in JSON. Okay, so the custom code part is getting the data from the internet, cleaning it up, right, and storing to Azure Data Lake. That's one big component. I spent a lot of time with that. The second one is the USQL scripts, right, that does the big data analysis, let's put it that way, that will kind of do the aggregations, all that stuff. And then the Power BI just directly goes to the data lake store, right, or Azure SQL. But I mostly left the process data in Azure Data Lake. I did a little bit in SQL Azure, but I didn't do it because that's just more playing around, right? So I was more productive with Azure Data Lake.
So you spend most of your time, let's say, the back end, and then you're leveraging Power
BI, yes.
to build the application, the presentation.
Yes. So there's the Power BI desktop application that you download into your computer or in the browser, right? And you start to, pull what the columns are, bar charts, this and that, X and Y axis, how you want to visualize it, you want to do a map, those type of things, right? So, yeah, that's kind of like where my effort was put. Yeah.
So in this demonstration, you're showing us iPhone app, right?
Yes.
Does it generate Android app?
Yes, definitely.
Exactly the same, pretty much.
I haven't tried it because I haven't really tried it. It should be the same, but I'm sure there's some subtle differences, right? So if you go back to this one, iPhone, iPad, I had it for the Android, tablet, and Windows Phone. Basically, those are your options, right? So yeah, so you know what? Let's just kind of wrap it up there. I got like a ton of more slides, but I just want to get to the mobile part because a lot of you guys are more into the mobile. Any questions about the mobile part, sir?
So those charts which you can see in the mobile app.
Yeah.
You actually set everything up on the desktop, right?
Yes.
So mobile app just visualize those data.
Yes.
Is there any frameworks or libraries for mobile apps where you can integrate it into your own app and just grab analytics from Power BI?
Yeah. Good question. So yes.
Separately, not the whole app, but I want to use, for example, this map with this analytics inside my own application.
Yes, there is. So Google search Power BI embedded, right? So basically, if you say, okay, I only want this chart or that map only in my web application, right? Or native or whatever, right? You can, all it is, it's just, you have some JavaScript you put on the page, right? That points, and you have to give it some kind of key or whatever, right? Or you don't have to if it's totally anonymous. And then it just generates that map and a little bit of navigation and filtering and options there, right? So it's basically an HTML iframe with the URL to the Power BI app service with some querying parameters about your report or whatever, and it just pulls it. So
in native apps, I have to use a WebView, right, for it. There is no way to use something more native.
not that I know of. Probably have to do, what you just said, native view, and then just use JavaScript. Yeah. Okay.
I think what we'll do is just wrap up. You can answer a couple questions after,
Sure.
right? So just want to thank
Yeah.
Thank you, Roy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, okay. Oh, thanks.